there's something fascinating happening with Nvidia. Most people know Nvidia for one thing, making the chips that power AI. But if you look closer, Nvidia is doing much more than selling GPUs. The company is helping build data centers, providing software, investing in AI companies, supporting customers that buy its chips, and even becoming involved in how those GPUs are financed. So what exactly is Nvidia building? And how did a company once known mainly for gaming graphics cards become one of the most important companies in the AI revolution? Let's start with the most important piece, the GPU. When ChatGPT took off, millions of people realized something important about AI. AI doesn't just need software, it needs an enormous amount of computing power. Modern AI models can contain billions or even trillions of parameters, and training and running these models can require thousands of GPUs working together. That's why chips like Nvidia's H100 became so valuable. Companies such as CoreWeave and Lambda have purchased large numbers of Nvidia GPUs and built infrastructure around them to provide computing power to AI companies. But here's the interesting part. A single GPU doesn't create a massive AI system. You need thousands of GPUs. You need high-speed networking so those GPUs can communicate with each other. You need storage, you need electricity, you need cooling, and perhaps most importantly, you need software to control everything. In other words, Nvidia is no longer simply selling a chip, it's selling an entire computing system. One of Nvidia's biggest advantages isn't actually the hardware, it's the software. That software ecosystem is built around CUDA. CUDA allows developers to use Nvidia GPUs for complex computing tasks. Over the years, countless AI tools and applications have been built around Nvidia's ecosystem, and that creates a powerful network effect. The more developers use Nvidia, the more software gets optimized for Nvidia. The more software gets optimized for Nvidia, the more companies want Nvidia GPUs. And the more companies use Nvidia, the larger the ecosystem becomes. You can design a fast chip, but building an entire software ecosystem around that chip can take years. That's one of the reasons Nvidia has been able to maintain such a strong position in AI computing. Imagine a company wants to build a massive AI system. It can't simply buy a bunch of GPUs and put them in a room. It needs a data center. And AI data centers are very different from traditional data centers. AI workloads require huge numbers of GPUs running in parallel. That creates enormous demand for electricity, networking, cooling, and physical infrastructure. So companies building AI infrastructure face a very practical problem. Having enough money doesn't mean you can instantly build an AI data center. You need land, you need power, you need cooling systems, you need networking, and most importantly, you need GPUs. CoreWeave is a good example. The company originally focused on providing GPU computing for crypto mining, but as demand for AI exploded, it shifted heavily toward AI infrastructure. Today, companies like CoreWeave are essentially building something that resembles a power plant, except instead of selling electricity, they sell computing power, and Nvidia supplies many of the machines inside that infrastructure. Not every company wants to build its own massive data center. Instead, they can rent computing capacity. That's where companies like CoreWeave come in. CoreWeave buys large numbers of Nvidia GPUs, builds the infrastructure around them, and then rents computing capacity to other companies. Think about it like this. A traditional power company builds a power plant. It buys expensive equipment, generates electricity, and sells that electricity to customers. A GPU cloud company does something surprisingly similar. It buys expensive GPUs, builds a data center, generates computing capacity, and sells that capacity to AI companies. And Nvidia sits near the beginning of that entire chain. Nvidia sells the GPUs. The infrastructure provider turns those GPUs into computing capacity. AI companies use that computing power to train and run their models. and consumers eventually pay for AI products. So Nvidia occupies a very interesting position. It sits close to the beginning of the AI economy's supply chain. But GPUs have one very different characteristic. There's something most ordinary AI users probably never think about. GPUs are not buildings and they're not oil fields. Their technology changes incredibly quickly. A new generation arrives and the previous generation can still work perfectly well, but its economic value can decline. That creates a strange characteristic in the AI hardware market. A GPU can still be completely functional while becoming much less valuable economically when a newer and more powerful generation arrives. And this matters enormously for companies buying thousands of GPUs, because they don't just need to pay for the hardware, they need those GPUs to generate enough revenue over their useful life to justify the investment. Nvidia is going deeper into the AI ecosystem. This brings us to another interesting part of Nvidia's strategy. Nvidia is becoming increasingly involved across the broader AI ecosystem. It doesn't just provide GPUs. The company also invests in AI companies and infrastructure businesses. CoreWeave is one example of the type of relationship that shows how closely Nvidia is becoming connected to the companies building AI infrastructure. The bigger strategy is fairly straightforward. If you sell a GPU, you make money from selling that GPU. But if you become part of the entire AI infrastructure, you can potentially benefit from multiple layers of the market: chips, networking, software, data centers, cloud computing, AI models, robotics, and eventually the industries using AI. In the past, Nvidia was primarily known for gaming GPUs. Then GPUs became incredibly important for machine learning. Now Nvidia is pushing towards something much bigger: the AI factory. The concept is simple. A traditional factory takes raw materials, uses machines, and produces physical products. An AI factory takes data, uses GPUs and networking systems, and produces intelligence. That could mean trained models, AI-generated content, predictions, recommendations, or automated decisions. So Nvidia isn't simply trying to sell the machines, it wants to provide much of the infrastructure required to operate these AI factories. And if that strategy succeeds, Nvidia won't just be selling hardware, it will be selling the infrastructure that powers the AI economy. The AI race isn't simply about who can build the smartest AI model. There's another race happening underneath it. Who can build enough infrastructure to run those models? A company can create an incredible AI model, but without enough GPUs, without data centers, without electricity, without networking, it can't serve millions of users. That's why the AI boom is creating another race, the race for computing infrastructure, and Nvidia is sitting right in the middle of it. So if you think of Nvidia as simply a company that sells graphics cards, you may be missing the bigger picture. Nvidia is building an ecosystem that includes GPUs, networking, software, cloud infrastructure, AI companies, and massive computing systems. The company is positioning itself across multiple layers of the AI economy, and that may be the real reason Nvidia has become one of the most important companies of the AI era. But there's still one huge question: how fast will the demand for AI computing continue to grow? If AI keeps expanding, demand for GPUs and computing infrastructure could remain enormous. But if growth eventually slows, the entire industry built around these machines will have to adapt. And that may be the real story to watch. Nvidia isn't simply selling chips, it's betting on how the world will build AI over the next decade.